Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to my studios. And a few days ago, I saw Morphin Legacy, well, the Legacy Nerds post on social media about the canceled Power Rangers Netflix reboot. And the plot synopsis and how this movie was going to end up being about was not good at all. And I am so thankful that this did not happen, because if it ended up being about just one Ranger alone, then it's not a Power Rangers movie. And as much as I love Tommy, but come on, bro. Like, you're just ruining this reboot, the possible chances of this franchise of becoming good. And we're about to find out all of this information, how all of this came about. So let's get to it.
Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider here with a little interesting video talking about the what would have been reboot for Power Rangers. Obviously right now we're in this kind of stage where we might be getting a new Disney Plus reboot with Hasbro, but that's still in the stages where we haven't heard very much and we're all kind of prepared for it to be canceled. But if you remember, of course, we had the old Netflix one that was with Jonathan Entwistle and Jenny Klein. And recently, Jonathan Entwistle did a Reddit AMA, I think in promotion for the new Karate Kid movie that's coming out. The Legacies one, that poster reminds me of the 22 Jump Street.
I'm gonna check that movie out very
where
soon.
they had like Jump Street Legacies. But anyway, he did an AMA and someone asked him about what his Power Rangers reboot would have looked like. And I wanted to just take a look at that because I thought it would be fun to talk about like what could have been. So I'm going to read some sort of snippets from it. From as early as 2018, I had created an entire new universe for Power Rangers, kind of a multiverse. It was fashionable back then because of course now we know it's fashionable to let everyone rumors we had. We know we'd have several iterations of rumors about this. I remember we also had the leaked script about the movie they were working on that had time travel. This kind of reminds me of that in the sense that obviously it involves the time travel or multiverse or something, but just in the sense that it feels like something I would like. I think it actually would be pretty cool, like whether it was a comic or a show or...
Honestly, I think it'll sound much better in the comic than live action. Why create a reboot that involves time traveling? I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well make a Power Rangers Time Force movie that we should have gotten back in 2002 when the show was really, really good at its time. But why create a time travel which doesn't make any sense? And I'm not a big fan of time traveling plots at all. You don't need that anymore.
I like this idea. I think there's some cool stuff here. Same thing with that multiverse thing. It sounded kind of messy, the movie scripts, but I thought it would have been cool to see as a fan. But I think it's kind of a bad idea to start big. You don't do the multiverse season 1. You do it season... Seeing that, I just think it's a little bit of like a mess to start off so quickly. It is interesting, the idea that they were going to use Drakkon, though. Obviously, this wouldn't have been JDF Tommy because this would have been after his passing. And I think this was stuff that was worked on after his passing because we had that rumor that the main character was going to be named Tommy. He was going to be the leader as Green Ranger, and then we were going to have him turn evil, and then Red was going to take over and we'd have female lead for Red. And I liked that idea. I liked the idea actually of the reboot having Green Rangers leader. Not because of like, oh my god, the Green Ranger is the best.
The reason why I'm not okay with this idea is because, one, when you look at movies and TV shows nowadays, and I'm not against all women being leaders, there are some good leaders that I see represented by females, but if you're forcing it down in people's throats to the point where you're trying to erase all things male of what males did before females came along and did it better than us, which is okay. But what I'm saying is that you don't need to have a female leader in every TV show and film, because now I feel like that sounds like something that feminists will always do. You know, the future is female and all that bull crap. And I'm glad this project did not happen. You know, if you're gonna make something like this, make a comic about it, not a live action TV show out of it, because we had that in Cosmic Fury. Why do it again in the reboot? And I have a gut feeling that it's going to be way worse than what Jonathan Entwistle was cooking. And I knew from the moment he came onto this picture, I literally thought that I can trust him with this project. I thought it was going to be based on the originals. But it's unfortunate that the way he wants to present this reboot, nah, nah, I don't trust him.
The idea, for some reason, of the new reboot, whether it was this one or the next one or the one after that or whatever, having a new color as leader. I just kind of like the idea of that fresh start and unique
No,
identity. Of course, the
nah.
fans' mind were close to it. Like, in general, fans can be pretty close-minded individuals, but this is such a trivial thing to be close-minded about. Like, I can get it to a degree if you get upset or annoyed or mixed feelings about a change to the mythology or the story, but a color swap, you couldn't accept a color swap? My God. But anyway, I thought that would have been cool. And I thought it would have been kind of a cool way to pay tribute to Tommy. I think you probably would have run into some mixed territory of people complaining about having everything revolve around Tommy. And I would kind of agree with that depending on how it turned out. But I do like
Yeah,
the
a
idea
little too
of them just
much.
naming a character after him, sort of in tribute. I think that would have been kind of nice. But it's definitely interesting. And it sounds like they would have maybe had Drakkon be perma-evil. I don't know, because we don't have a lot of details, but I'm curious whether it would have been like Drakkon in the comics, where you kind of have your cake and eat it too, where you introduce the multiverse to have a version of Tommy that's always evil, and then our Tommy, the new reboot Tommy, would have stayed good. Or would you have had the reboot Tommy become Drakkon? I think that actually would have been kind of cool. Have a
I think it's
Tommy that just
stupid,
permanently turns
honestly.
evil and there's no multiverse element to that. And you start off with your lead character and then he becomes the big bad of the series, and that could have been kind of neat. But like I said, I think it would have been interesting to see, but maybe too much of a mess to start off so big. I think you want to start off a little bit smaller scale with stuff like that. And obviously, this would have borrowed heavily from MMPR. Just like I think, even though they said it's not supposed to be MMPR for the new one with Disney, I think there's going to be some elements borrowed from it for the sake of
Yeah.
familiarity. It's also
Honestly, the one from Disney Plus I support because as long as they don't get rid of MPR altogether, which it can have some elements from MPR with the red, black, blue, yellow, pink, and green, maybe Zonon and Alpha, and hopefully they can put out a thing that is not just powers, representing powers, not no Bioman, not no Flash Man. Like, give us an actual thing, you know? I mean, I don't mind it being animal, like um methodical animal creatures, like how Dow Ranger was. I don't mind that. But if it's dinosaurs, I don't mind that either. But you got to give us a thing regardless, bro. I'm all for Disney Plus original ideas that it's not MPR. You know, as long as they borrow some elements from it, then okay, I rocks with it. But the one with Jonathan and Torso, I knew something was fishy about it. Like it did, like this does not sound cool at all.
I've thought a lot about the Draken stuff because I think the comics did the best in terms of more
They did
mainstream
way
audiences that
better,
read comics or are willing to
way
read
better.
comics during Draken and Shattered Grid, because I think that's a thing that a lot of people caught because it made news, like IGN and whatever reported like, oh my God, there's this cool Green White Ranger hybrid. And I always thought that there was probably a narrow window that is maybe closed now, I think is closed now, where they could have capitalized on MMPR's popularity and nostalgia, kind of like in the Cobra Kai way I'm talking about, but whether it be them doing a Netflix movie or series where you get the cast back like once and always and do live action Draken, I think if you did that really well.
I think that would have been a dopest ideas ever if Hasbro would have continued on with the show and making toys, or better yet, have Playmates do their version of the reignition line, but with some updated toys with better paint jobs and better face sculptures and everything. But with Lord Dragon being the main villain in Power Rangers, if they were to make a sequel, you know, I personally believe that this would have been a great series by Hasbro if David Yost would have written the script. You know, Kremlin would have been alive again, and we would have had the completed OG Rangers back and have Mainstay the Ranger. You know, I think chances are you would have written some different ideas of what Kimberly has been up to since Mighty Morphin. So the question is, if they were to make a sequel to Once and Always Part Two, how would they explain Tommy's death now that JDF is no longer on Earth with us? I mean, would they get a new guy to become the new Green Ranger? How, how are they going to do it? It's basically the question. But they're not going to do any of that right now because there's no new show, new season, or none of that.
Been pretty successful because you would have capitalized on the older fans, the casual older fans, not the echo chamber of the fandom, but that would have been excited by that. The problem you run into with that in comparison to something like Cobra Kai is that, you know, PR doesn't really have actual actors for a lot of the cast compared to Cobra Kai, so it wouldn't have felt, I don't think, as impactful as Cobra Kai. But also, like, an animated series could be cool. You know, I've gone on record as saying if we do an animated series, I don't want to see them adapt the comics because I don't know why our only ideas for shows is adapting something. Like, let's just write something from scratch. But I would love to see, like, a movie or a mini series based on the comics, like they do for the DC animated movies, but not like for the main thing. But I think that could have been cool too. You get like
Yeah, that's a
Ultron
good
style
idea.
animation and do the Drakkon story or version of it. I think you had a window of time where you capitalized on MMPR's nostalgia popularity because you're eventually going to run out of people that care about MMPR. You know, the core hardcore fan base is already whining about it, but the casual fans that grew up with it are going to just gradually not care. And eventually we're going to get to a place where you're just going to have those small pockets of people that grew up with Samurai or Ninja Storm or whatever, and then just the general public thinking of MMPR when they think Power Rangers because that's kind of the brand, you know,
Right,
iconography that you use.
right.
And there's not going to be a lot of general interest if they were to try to bring back a nostalgia project. Our best hope is almost to just wait for PR to be completely forgotten and then
Bullshit. I don't believe that for a second. The fact that you're hoping that Power Rangers will be forgotten just because there's no new TV show or movie whatsoever is kind of dumb. Like, don't even think like that, bruh. It's coming. It's coming.
out with something and it almost seems like a new idea. Like this is a weird example and not at all comparable in a way, but that movie Fall Guy or Free Guy, oh no, Free Guy's a different movie. There's too many movies that sound the same. I think it was Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling, really funny movie. I didn't even know that was based off of a show. Like, I would be kind of cool almost to wait 10 years
Really?
and have Power Rangers catch on a new generation that doesn't have any of the baggage of the
No,
fans and MMPR and
that's too
Sentai.
much,
But I don't think
bruh.
that would happen, but it just kind of reminded me of that situation. Anyway, I got off topic with the ramble, but that's why it's called
Yeah, you
Rambles.
did.
I think this was interesting. I think there would have been some cool ideas here.
It's the fact that they're gonna have a night thing for a Power Rangers reboot to be expanded in Multiverse is kind of stupid because I was expecting Power Ranger-ish for a reboot project, something that is based off of MMPR. But how they went about it and the way Jonathan wanted his project to be, it sounds off. Like if there's no martial arts in it, something that Power Rangers has been known for years, then it's not Power Rangers. It's somewhere between the Chronicles and Harry Potter, but with no martial arts action, and that's a big turn off for me. Like I've seen so many projects in the MCU, they barely use. Well, the MCU has martial arts action, but we really don't really see enough hand-to-hand combat, physical combat. And the Power Rangers 2017 did not do none of that. All I see was the Rangers talk without doing any martial arts action. Them training and fighting the hologram putties, that's not it. That's not it. And until we get a proper Power Rangers reboot, we have to wait for Disney Plus and the producers of Perry Jackson and the Olympians to come up with something great. Let them cook.
He said since 2018, that's kind of crazy how long they were working on that. This is one of those situations where I would love
And
to
look what
see
happened.
like just a book released or a documentary about all the iterations they would have had, because there's undoubtedly probably at least I would say 3 to 4 versions, because I think this version sounds like what was worked on after JDF's death, because I don't think they were necessarily going to have it centering on Tommy before that. They might have had an element, but I think they were kind of inspired by the idea of paying tribute to him and capitalizing on his popularity. Again, I feel like it would have been something that I would have liked as a fan and would have been really interesting since we know, but it maybe would have been a little bit too messy right out the gate to do Drakkon and multiverse stuff. However, I don't mind the idea in general of them using Drakkon if you do some sort of Tommy storyline, even if it's not necessarily Tommy or if it's inspired by the idea of Drakkon. But I like the idea of if we
Yeah.
do a reboot and instead of doing a Rita or a Zed inspired character, you have Drakkon there in the Rogues Gallery. I think that would have been interesting, and it's kind of cool to think that they were thinking of stuff from the comic to put in the show. So yeah, just something to think about.
I'm gonna leave this video here and shout out to Dawson Ryder once again. Look, even though I disagree with some of your points, but I still think that Jonathan could have come up with something better. And the fact that it took them like since 2018 to come up with something different, but I wasn't expecting anything like this. I was expecting something like involving Rangers and spandex, but more of an armor based style. But if it's not gonna have any martial arts, then what's the point of even making a Power Rangers reboot if you're not gonna involve martial arts? That's kind of like where I'm at with Simon Bennett's Power Rangers projects, from Beast Morphers to Cosmic Fury, when he literally stated in the past that unmorphed fights and civilian fight scenes hurt the show a lot as far as like telling initial stories. And I think that quote really was a slap in the face to everybody that grew up with Power Rangers. For those who love martial arts action, and you're just stopping civilian fight scenes, and you barely did any of that. You only showing like what, a minute or 58-second fight scene. That's not enough. At the end of the day, I'm just glad that you know Simon Bennett, even though I appreciate some of the stuff he's did, but Power Rangers is, what I'm saying, Power Rangers is not in New Zealand anymore. So it's obvious to me that, things are about to change when an upcoming new series that is developing at Disney Plus is going to change the game. And hopefully, we'll be able to see some updates on the casting and etc. So that's just my thoughts on this. What are your thoughts on this? Link to the video will be down below. And